Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, who's actually in the Central Time Zone with us. And Megan, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming, and I'm looking forward to hearing your experience, strength, and hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Thank you, Eric, for having me. It's an honor to participate in my recovery today. I don't know that I always thought it that way. But my name is Megan Mann. I am an alcoholic, and I have a sobriety date. That day is April 16th, 2014. That is not a day that I chose. That is the day that the misery was so uncomfortable, that the pain broke me, I suppose. I didn't get here with my best thinking. My best thinking gets me drunk. I believe that it was nothing short of a divine intervention. And my job now, excuse me, is to cooperate with that intervention. Because how easily I can start to think that at 10 years, I somehow keep myself sober. I have a sponsor, and I adore my sponsor. She's a powerhouse in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if I can do half as much good in my lifetime as that woman has already done in hers, I'm going to call it a life well lived. With that being said, she does really terrible things like tell me the truth from time to time. And I have a grand sponsor that I utilize to complain about my sponsor. And he's always leading me back to our traditions and this idea of unity and the fact that we fight for each other, not against each other in this thing. I have a home group. It is the Bismarck Shoulder to Shoulder group. We meet on Tuesday nights at 7:30 at 1617 Michigan Avenue. If you ever find yourself in Bismarck, North Dakota on a Tuesday night, please hit me up, or a speaker meeting, and I'd love to put you to work. And I have the honor of working with other women in Alcoholics Anonymous on this life and death errand that we get to do. And my life is incredibly full because of that. So, I had messaged today, and I'm like, is there anything particular I talk on? Is it a story? What do we do here? Because I get confused. Period. I get confused and forget sometimes the format of things I'm supposed to be doing. And I love the idea, right, that we share our experience, strength, and hope, and each individual says in their own language how they have established a relationship with a God of their understanding, right, which is essentially our story. And I've been taught that whenever I speak in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, that it's important to speak about what alcoholism is. And, for me, I had a bizarre relationship with alcohol before I ever took a drink. I grew up in a home in which I idolized my dad. If you were to meet him, you'd be like, decent guy, maybe. To me, he's my dad, he's my hero, and dad was a drinker. And dad would come home every night at about 5:15, and the first thing he would do is he'd go to the cupboard and he'd grab his drinking glass. Might be a red flag if you have a drinking glass, but he'd grab his drinking glass and he'd pour it full of Canadian Windsor and about 2 fingers of water and lots of ice cubes. And I'd watch him consume that drink, right? And it's like his shoulders came off his ears, he relaxed. And most importantly, what I remember is that he took a little bit more interest in me. Not that he wasn't interested, right? But like we'd play Pinochle and he'd want to know what was going on in my life, and we'd solve the world's problems, right? And I loved those moments, right? And I loved what alcohol did for my dad. And I inherited a lot of his personality traits. I'm very tightly wound, rather neurotic. And, I probably could have used a drink at about the age of 7. But I had to wait another 7 years. And, but to me, it was literally like, I think most little girls are maybe excited for their wedding day or their first date. I'm excited for the first time I get a drink. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen, and I can't wait for it to happen because I know it's going to do for me what it does for my dad. And it did. And at 14 years old, I was hanging out with some kids who were a little older than me. We put our money together, and you see, I'm what I like to call frugal. Most people would call me cheap. But I did the math, right? And I went ounces per bottle, dollars I put in, did a little calculation, right? And there socially drinking, I suppose. And apparently that's not how I drink from the get-go. And I grabbed the bottle and I grabbed a shot glass and I went in the bathroom because that's where the cool kids drink, right? And my calculations told me 8 shots. So I took 8 shots in succession. And I walked out and I put the bottle on the coffee table and felt the need to tell everyone I had had my share, and like they cared. But what I do remember from that night is upon that announcement, everyone kind of went. And I took about 8 shots of Everclear in the span of about 12 minutes. And we proceeded to go to the high school dance. And I was drunk, and I got caught. I've never been a smooth drunk and definitely was not that night. And the next thing I recall is that I'm coming to in mom and dad's bathroom. And, so my first drunk actually started in a bathroom, ended in mom and dad's bathroom. And my last drunk actually ended in mom and dad's bathroom as well. So we go full circle on this thing. But what I remember, right, is waking up the next morning and, oh my God, I was sick as a dog. It's one of those mornings where your head is pounding and it feels like your tongue is wearing a sweater and your stomach is just bubbling, right? And I can't quite pull together the events of the night before, but I know I'm in trouble. And I walk out of my bedroom, I see the look on my mother's face and I know I'm in trouble. And, my mind went not to the association that alcohol is bad. My mind said, you know what, Megan, it was really stupid to start with Everclear. Why didn't you start with a wine cooler, you dummy, right? Because the thing is the effect that I got that night was like nothing I had ever experienced. Apparently, I got the effect that my father did, right? And prior to this point I shouldn't say that, then and now, I suffer from this thing I like to call the killer bees. I could be, I should be, I want to be. And when I drank that alcohol that night, those killer bees left me, right? I became everything I ever thought I could, should, and wanted to be. I grew 6 inches. I lost 20 pounds. My IQ rose by 50 points. The cool girls didn't intimidate me. The cute guys definitely wanted to flirt with me. And all of a sudden, I was a part of. Right. I finally felt like I was a part of. I felt like my skin fit me right for the first time in my life. And, I hear a lot of people say it's like they took their first great exhale. I took my first great inhale. Up until that point in my life, I felt like I was breathing through a straw. And it's like I was finally able to fill my lungs with air and hold my head high once I had a few drinks in me. And the thing that I didn't understand is that in that moment, I found a solution to a problem that I didn't know I had. Right. I found a solution to the fact that I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. And that might not be everyone's experience, but I was restless, irritable, and discontent before I ever touched a drink. And in that moment, alcohol took all of that away for me. And life was good. Right. The problem is, this is a progressive disease, right? And I proceeded to drink for the next 17 and a half years. I left home promptly upon age 18 to go to college. I was able to get a degree. And what I couldn't see is that my alcoholism is already making my choices for me. I had a path set out for me that I'd wanted to go down. But a lot of those classes were at 8:30 in the morning and I couldn't get my hungover butt out of bed. So I changed majors, right? I went to take an entrance exam for this particular profession, and I was a little intoxicated and then got banned from ever being able to take it again. So I switched, right? I pivoted because I'm quick on my feet like that. And all of these things are occurring, right? And alcohol is driving my life and I don't see it, right? You don't see the picture when you're in the middle of it. I think that I'm just having fun, right? I think that I'm in college. This is what you're supposed to do when you're in college. But the party didn't last real long. I'm getting consequences, and clearly they are related to my drinking. Eventually I have a great idea of I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to pursue an advanced degree. The degree will fix me, right? I'm going to have to be all professional and can't be doing the things that I'm doing. Well, I kept doing the things that I was doing and eventually got kicked out of that program, right? So I find myself at 29 years old and now I've traded my future. right? And I can clearly see that, right? And the one thing, right? Because my definition of what alcoholism was would change, right? It's like alcoholism is a person who gets a DUI. Well, I got a DUI, so I just changed my definition, right? And alcoholism is someone who loses a job due to their drinking. Well, that happened, right? So I keep changing my definition of alcoholism. And the one thing I could kind of hang my hat on is like, well, I'm in this program, right? I'm in school, I'm holding it together, even though I wasn't. So I get kicked out of that, and like any other self-respecting 29-year-old, I put my tail between my legs and I go home to mom and dad. And that was going to be the ultimate geographic, right? There were a few outside issues that were also involved in my alcoholism, and I'm thinking, you know what, I can't be doing that stuff when I'm living in mom and dad's basement. I can't be drinking the way I'm drinking when I'm living in mom and dad's basement. And I make a solemn oath, like I'm done. I'm not going to do this. Alcohol has wreaked havoc of my life, and I can see it, right? And I make an oath to myself, right? I'm not trying to get out of trouble. This is for me. And I made it about 3 days, and I got the fatal phone call, and somebody asked if I wanted to go out to the bar and have a drink, and I said yes. I've been getting real thirsty, and off to the races again, right? And for the next 3.5 years, I proceeded to attempt to drink myself to death. And I also proceeded to infect my family with the family disease of alcoholism. And I say that with the intense gravity that it deserves. My parents are still messed up till this day from prolonged exposure to me. And I don't know that there's ever going to be enough good that I can do in the world that will set that one right. And you will never hear me say any type of joke or backhanded comment about Al-Anon. I think Al-Anon is fabulous. I think it's a wonderful program, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the work that they do. So I find myself basically waking up every morning in the bedroom that I left when I was 18 years old. Like my Backstreet Boy poster is still on the wall. The awards I had won, right? A relatively promising future at 18 is like smothered on the walls every day, and I'm waking up and I'm facing that. And at this point, I progressed to being a morning drinker. In fact, I wish I would have found out that took care of the hangover pretty slick a lot earlier in my drinking because, oh my God, I got hellacious hangovers all throughout my drinking. But so I'm having a couple drinks in the morning, right? And I'm doing that just to get my hands to stop shaking, right? I'm doing that just so that I'm not puking all day. I'm doing it to get my head to stop pounding. But I'm also doing it because at some point in the day, I'm going to have to look my parents in the eye, and I'm filled with shame. And I don't know what happened to me, and I can't imagine what they're thinking of me. And this little stint that I was going to stay with mom and dad for 3 months max turns into 3 years. And I don't know what's going on, and I'm ashamed, and I'm embarrassed, and I'm isolated, and I'm alone. And every morning I would drink in the bathroom. And the reason I would drink in the bathroom is not because it's my spot. It probably seems that way, and maybe it is, but because the first couple of drinks were coming up. But I'm committed to the cause, and I would keep trying until I'd be able to get that boozy down the hatch to stay so that the hands would stop shaking and the shame would start to melt away, and I'd be able to function a little bit. The problem is, right, is that I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't know what I was up against. I understood that I drank goofy. In fact, I wore it like a badge of honor. Spent a lot of time in college, and usually could drink the football team under the table. And that's something that I wore like a badge of honor, right? I thought it made me cool. I thought I was the party girl. I didn't understand, right, that I have this physical allergy to alcohol, right? That is manifested once I take a drink. I trigger that phenomena of craving. And what that looks like for me is that I don't stop drinking until I black out, I pass out, I run out, or you kick me out. If I'm going to drink the way I want to drink, we're going to drink. And if I can't drink the way I want to drink, I might not even start, which is another reason that made me think that I didn't have a problem for a period of my drinking. But this idea, right, that if 1 is good, 2 is better, if 2 is better, 3 is great, if 3 is great, 4 is amazing, and so on down the line. I have every intention of going out for 2, and I stay out until 2, or for 2 days or 2 weeks. We never know, right? I cannot control and predict my drinking or my behavior once I start. And it gets me in a lot of precarious situations that we don't have time to get into tonight. But I know I drink goofy. I just don't have the vernacular for it. And I don't understand that it is an aspect of alcoholism. I think that if I was just stronger, that I was stronger willed, if I just tried harder, right, I could have a couple drinks and leave it alone. And trust me, I was committed to trying to run that experiment for quite some time as well. And I always failed. And the thing is that I wasn't drunk consecutively for 17 and a half years. I can stop. The problem is I can't stay stopped. I have a mind that lies to me in my own head and my own voice, and it always leads me back to that first drink, right? And once I take that first drink, I trigger the allergy, and I don't know what the heck is going to happen. And it can be subtle, right? It doesn't say things like, Megan, take a drink and go burn your life to the ground. It says things like, you know what, you just need a little relief. You just need to take a couple to take the edge off. Right? You know, it's been a long day. It's been a good day. We need to celebrate. It's Friday. You got to go see your friends at the bar, right? Well, what else are you going to do? You're going to be left out, right? It tells me these things that seem maybe harmless in nature, all so that it'll convince me to pick up that first drink. And time again, I believe the lie and I pick up the drink and I trigger the allergy. And all of that is fueled by the fact that I'm restless, irritable, and discontent when I am not drinking. And what this looks like in my life is that when I'm restless, my favorite place to be is when I'm on my way to someplace else, right? I don't stand still well. My husband and I got a dog a few years ago, and if he's outside, he wants to be inside. If he's inside, he wants to be outside. If he's with my husband, he wants to be with me. If he's with me, he wants to be with my husband. I'm like, it's okay, buddy, I get it. I'm restless too. But I'm like a ping pong ball, right? I'm bouncing all over the place, and I can't ever quite seem to find my place. And then I'm irritable, and this comes out in one of two different ways for me. Number one, I'll externalize it and watch out. I physically assaulted my 74-year-old mom because she got between me and the bottle. And I can only say that today because I have made amends. But the problem is that if you get between me and what I think I need to be okay, you're going to go down every single time. And the thing is that when I am spiritually sick or in active alcoholism, if I tell you I love you, you're in danger. And that is the bottom line. If I am not turning it outward, I'm turning it inward, and I look like a sad country song. I am drinking by myself with the lights off and the covers over my head, and I'm crying about how my dog ran away or the guy left me or how I no longer have the career. But I have this intense self-loathing, and I turn it inward, and I can't seem to get out of it, but I'm irritable. And I'm discontent. My life motto's been, I'll be happy when. And these things, by the way, can still manifest in my life today when I put the spiritual program of action down, right? I become restless, irritable, and discontent, and I start thinking I'll be happy when I get a different job or when I get a different husband or when I get a different fill in the blank, right? But luckily, through strong sponsorship, I've been able to address these things through step 10 and a strong step 11 practice, right? And to realize that the when is now, right? If I'm living for the when, I'm never going to find the contentment, and God is now. Therefore, I need to get still and I need to find that voice. At 31 years old is when I got sober, and I wish I could tell you that something exciting happened maybe, but nothing happened, right? We tell our stories of what we were like, right? What happened and what we're like now. And when I get to the what happened part, I'm like, nothing. I traded everything years before I got sober. Apparently I have a high threshold of internal pain. But on April 15, 2014, it's as though God paralyzed the liar within me long enough for me to see the truth. And the truth was I wasn't just killing myself because I was fine with that. I was killing my family. And, my 74-year-old mom was taking care of her alcoholic daughter and her husband who has dementia. And I wasn't doing a darn thing to help out around the house, cook dinner, anything. And she came home from getting the groceries, and she's hauling in the groceries. And I saw this look on her face and this look in her eye. That was something along the lines of, what did I do to you to make you this way? And in that moment, it broke me enough to ask for help. And being in North Dakota, I was in rural North Dakota at the time. All of North Dakota is pretty rural, but this was real rural. There wasn't a whole lot of options, and but my mom knows about alcoholism. We have literally, I didn't get the birds and the bees talk. I got the don't drink talk because I literally have an uncle who fell off the bar stool, hit his head, and died. My mom knows a thing or two about alcoholism, and she knew that she had second syringes to do something. To try and provide her daughter who was dying with some type of resource and some type of help, or otherwise I would realize that I had overreacted. And that's exactly what she did. She poured me into her vehicle and took me to the emergency room. And, it's not a 12-step call in the typical sense that we think of as a 12-step call, but the doctor I was working with, I tend to think that I'm a Chihuahua who's a pit bull. I'm trying to start stuff with this huge doctor, and he's just like, I ain't gonna deal with you. So we called down the LAC, and the LAC came down, and she was dressed nice, and she had makeup on. She was accessorized. These were things that were like foreign to me at this point in my life. I'm basically wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants everywhere I go, and the only way I know that I've eaten the night before is because the food is like strewed across the t-shirt. And this lady walks in and she's well put together, and I'm braced for the argument to defend my drinking because I've had that before, and I'm good at it, and I got a sharp tongue, and I'm ready to defend my drinking. But that's not what she did. She said, I've been where you're at. We're going to get you some help. And those few words, I believe, changed the course of my life, because it had never, ever, ever occurred to me that someone had felt the way that I felt. Right? It never occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, this woman had been in the emergency room with her butt hanging out of a gown and her parents crying in the corner because she suffered from what I suffered from. And it gave me just enough hope to take action. And that's what I did. 2 days later, I found myself in a treatment center. That is another thing you will never hear me say anything cruel about. They gave me a very expensive big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that's exactly what they did. And I had a treatment counselor. And he laid it out to me, and he said, Megan, I want you to pretend that you're in the emergency room. You've had a heart attack. We're going to open you up. We're going to put some stents in your heart. But here's the thing. If you don't change your diet, and if you don't start getting some exercise, your butt is going to be right back in the emergency room yet again. And you know what, Megan? I really don't want to have to see you again. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to regular meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is going to be your change diet, and you are going to get a sponsor, and you are going to work steps, and that is going to be your exercise and cardiac rehab. And if you do those two things, I can assure you that I will never have to see you again. So that is what your plan is going to be. And I don't liken myself to a rebellious alcoholic. I like to follow the rules, and I wanted a gold star. So I did what the man told me to do. And through that, I took 12 steps that I thought were ridiculous. And I got results I never could have dreamed possible. Right? I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I like to joke that I stayed here because you hugged me. Because I was incredibly, incredibly lonely, and you were not, and you were kind, and you said things like, I'm really glad you're here. And there was a part of me that knew that I had nothing to offer you. Therefore, the reason that you must be happy that I'm there is simply because I was. And I found comfort in that because I hadn't been welcomed anywhere in quite some time. And I stayed and I did the things, right? I got a sponsor creature because I was told to. I didn't know what a sponsor creature did. I really hoped that it meant they were going to financially sponsor me some way, somehow. I was very wrong in that. But she took my hand, right? And she led me through these steps. And what these steps did is they led me to a God. She gently put my hand in the hand of a loving God. Right. And as long as I have one hand in God's and one hand in my sponsors, and I remain plugged into this fellowship, I believe that even on the days that are difficult, and it's been a difficult year, that I will be okay. My relationship, right, with this power, I didn't grow up in a home that was spiritual or religious. In fact, when I was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, I had a little neighbor friend, and I make friends similar to how I date. I take hostages, right? And if you're going to be my friend, you're not going to be anyone else's. And I think her family was a little alarmed in my pre-stalker behavior. And anyway, they would take me to church with them on Sundays. And one particular Sunday, I'm just kind of a fidgety person by nature, and I'm fidgety, and they kind of throw a Bible at me and tell me to read this and sit still, and I'm paging through it. And I want to be very, very clear that this is just what my 9-year-old head thinks my 9-year-old head read. I have no idea. I am not a biblical expert, nor have I really ever cared enough to go back and see if this is actually there. But I read something along the lines that said something to me, my interpretation. If you're an unbaptized child, you go into hell. And guess who was an unbaptized child? And in that moment, right, I was kind of ticked off. I was like, shouldn't my parents go to hell? And never did I ask any questions. Never did I gain any clarification. I made a story up and I ran with it, which is what I do. And I held on to this story for a very long time. And basically this story is that God sends innocent babies to hell. I don't want any part of that, right? It's worse than like a puppy kicker. I don't want to be a puppy kicker, so why am I going to do that? But this moment must have been rather impactful in my life, because at about age 17, I start getting some pretty heavy external consequences from my drinking. And I have this brilliant idea that I'm going to get baptized. And I'm 17, so I had to take a year of classes, and they were on Saturday morning, and then I had to go to church on Sunday morning, so I never got to sleep in, which was not cool for me. And then at the end of this, they like dunk me in the water in front of the congregation with all the babies, and it was like super embarrassing for a 17-year-old. And little do I know, faith without works is dead. And I arise from this deal, and I'm still getting in trouble for my drinking. And in my mind, that was kind of like, I've tried God. Again, preposterous, but that's what I ran with, right? And just like the book says, how easily it is for us to readily supplant our old ideas when you offer me something like the new iPhone. I don't have the new iPhone, but you better bet I want it without ever having it, and I'll throw whatever I got now away if you tell me that this is better. Now, when it comes to my idea of a higher power, you better bet that it's a little bit harder for me to discard that idea, and it was. And I didn't realize, right? I didn't realize that I had these misconceptions until I was about 18 months sober. And people started being really mean to me, and they started saying things like, no, you don't get the job promotion, and no, I'm not going to date you. And life was just not going my way. And I had a temper tantrum of epic proportion. And I used to say my sponsor fired me. She never fired me. She sent me to someone that I could hear. And I worked with a gentleman, Roger B. out of Minneapolis, for a few moments. And he told me, he asked me, hey, Megan, what's your prayer life like? And I'm like, well, Raj, I'm glad you asked. And basically I proceed to tell him that I hit my knees every morning and basically am giving God the middle finger about how he should be doing this, and my life sucks, and basically where's mine, right? I feel as though I have given so much, and I'm not getting my reward. Like, God is a gumball machine. And he said, that's okay. God is big enough to handle your anger, Megan. That is just fine. You keep talking to God. And he said, but I want you to end it with, but I'm here anyway. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And then he told me to do something that was revolutionary to me. And he told me, you know what, Megan, I want you to write down your conception of God. And excuse my language, but I'm going to tell you exactly what he said. He said, I don't want the bullshit answer you think I want to hear. I want the truth. And it was probably the first time in that 18 months that I was honest fully. Right. And I wrote my concept of God, and man, it is dark and twisty, or it was at that time. And it said things like God is fickle. God is a slave driver. God only loves people who love God the right way. And I don't love God right. And I mean, we're talking like 3 pages of dark and twisty. And I still have it. I like to go back and look at it. And really, I wasn't right in my concept of God at all. That's who I was at that point in time. But that's a whole nother story. So anyway, I share this with Roger, and he just says, well, how's that working for you? And I said, well, I'm talking to you, so probably not great. And he said, I want you to go look for God, Megan. And he said, what I mean by that is I just want you to observe some things in your life, whether it be nature, whether it be watching mothers or fathers with their children, pet owners with their pets. I want you to just observe things, and I want you to look for God. I want you to stop making up the stories in your head and look for the evidence that surrounds you every day in regards to this power. And I didn't really know what he was talking about, but I said, okay. And about this time, my mother had called and mentioned my father has dementia, and he was having a particularly not so great night. And as I said, my dad and I are close. And she said, would you come home? Your dad's really agitated. I can't get him to calm down. So I get in the car and I drive about an hour, and I walk into the house. And I've never seen my dad like this prior to this evening, and I had never seen him like this since. But he was very agitated, and it was almost as though he remembered me at the worst of my drinking, right? And I walked in the house, and typically my dad is all smiles and hugs, and that was not the case this night. In fact, he used some expletives and told me to get out of his house. Again, out of all of the horrendous things that I did in my drinking, my father never told me to get out of his house. And I'm just kind of standing there, and I don't really know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing here. And I kind of approach him again. And he says, you know what, you're the biggest mistake we ever made. And I'm just like, again, kind of stunned, not knowing what to do. And I kind of attempt again. And he, proceeds to tell me how I disgraced the family name. We really don't have a family name, so that was kind of comical, but it still stung. And my mom at this point is in the corner, basically cowering, bawling her eyes out because she thinks I'm going to drink over this. And I make another attempt, and and he tells me how ashamed he is of me and how I'm never going to amount to anything. And I just looked at him and I said, "That's okay, Dad. I love you anyway." And again, he comes at me with some type of aggressive remark about how I have ruined my life, which was true. And I said, "That's okay, Dad. I love you anyway." And we go back and forth like that. It was maybe 10, 15 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. Finally, Dad calms down and goes to bed. I now calm Mom down and assure her I'm not going to drink over this. And I get in the car and I drive home. And I call Roger, right? Because I think that I am going to get some great sympathy points on this story. If I'm being honest, that was my motive for calling him. And I explained to him what had just happened, and he busted out laughing, which I was highly offended. I did not find the situation funny. And he said, "Megan, don't you see it? Don't you understand that what just happened between you and your dad is what you've been doing with God? You've been hitting your knees every morning, and you've been cussing God out, and God has just been sitting there going, 'That's okay, Megan, I love you anyway.'" And in that moment, something shifted for me, right? And whether it was some of the work that I had been doing prior with Roger and looking for God, I love a new pair of glasses where he says, "You know why you can't find God? Because God's never been lost," which I truly believe. But I also believe that what I look for, I will find. That what I focus on will grow. And when I was looking for the goodness of God, right, I found it. And when I look for the goodness of God today, I find it. But in that moment, something shifted for me, and I guess I had a step two experience, right? I was willing, right, to let go of my prejudgment, my old conception that wasn't working anyway, and start to build something new, and something that worked. And I had mentioned a few years ago that my husband and I got a dog. We accidentally got a dog. It is a long story. He accidentally bought a dog. It was not a good time in our lives to get a dog. I didn't want said dog. I love dogs, but I didn't want said dog. You got a big old golden retriever. I wanted like a little schnauzer, right? Or a Russell Terrier, right? A big old golden retriever. So I'm kind of bitter about this dog. In fact, I call my sponsor and I'm like, "I don't think we should get it. And we're going to get it. And then I'm going to have to give it back and I'm going to look bad." And I have no idea. And this is kind of embarrassing. But how much work a puppy is, that they're essentially a baby, and you have to get up in the middle of the night, you got to let it out and you got to feed them, and I knew you had to clean up poop and stuff like that, but I didn't understand how fragile these little puppies were. They live in the wild, can't they just raise themselves? Apparently not. So I'm not really a big fan of this dog idea, but we get the dog. And I was right. This dog is a ton of work. As I mentioned, he is a golden retriever. I don't get to wear black anymore. I'm constantly covered in golden glitter. That dog sheds. Like, I don't understand how he's hair. I have to vacuum the couch. I mean, who has to vacuum their couch, right? But the carpet I have to vacuum at least 4 times a week, and the stupid vacuum cleaner is always filled. It's awful. And he costs a lot of money. Like, you gotta give him food, and I gotta take him to the vet every once in a while just to make sure I'm keeping him alive correctly. And he has tummy troubles. He's a puker, and he likes to puke in the bed, on my side of the bed, only my side of the bed. So sometimes I'll get into bed because my husband knows I like the bed made and won't check for dog puke first, and I have a nice little surprise. And the best part of all of it is he's a piddler. If he were to come over to my house, he would be so excited. He would pee all over your shoes. And for some reason, that really embarrasses me. Like, I'm supposed to be able to control that. This dog is a ton of work, right? And here's the thing. I couldn't love that dog more. If it were to save that dog from pain, I would jump in front of a bus, and I would gladly be hit by a bus in order to save my dog from pain. It is the most bizarre, I don't have kids, by the way, love that I've ever experienced. Right? Because essentially the dog does nothing for me, right? He doesn't pay my bills. He doesn't clean my house. He does a lot of work in those areas, or gives me a lot of work. But I couldn't love that dog more. And every once in a while, right? As I mentioned, he's a golden retriever. They have a lot of energy. He's like all over the place, right? He's just like kind of a social moron. And but every once in a while he'll come over and he'll put his little puppy head in my lap, and he'll just kind of cuddle me, and we like have this moment, right? And it occurred to me, right? Because then it's like squirrel, and he's off chasing his tail or looking for a tennis ball, or trying to pee on somebody's shoes. And it occurred to me at one point that's a lot like my relationship with God. I'm God's puppy. I pee on his shoes. I shed all over the place. I probably caused a lot of stress and work. But the bottom line is God couldn't love me more, right? And when I start to grasp, right, the love of this power that, quite frankly, I don't understand. And I'm glad on that, because I think the minute that I think that I understand God, I'm probably not going to need God. And I definitely am not going to need you little drunks. And I will probably get so spiritual that I float right out the top of AA. So I don't understand God, and I'm okay with that. And if I'm honest with you, I wrestle with God. January 2nd of last year, I had a surgery, relatively minor thing, but my husband had been ill, and ended up getting a biopsy 2 days after I had this surgery, and had cancer. And I often joke that my favorite spiritual principle is busyness, right? I like to get busy and just not have to deal with things. I couldn't get busy. I was recovering from surgery. I'm faced with the fact that my husband has cancer at 50 years old, and all of the fear, right, that comes with that. And this idea, right, of why us, right? And what was interesting in all of this is that I wrestled with God, but I also remembered what Roger told me, and that is that God was big enough to handle it as long as I never stopped talking to God. And I believe that God and I emerged closer because of the wrestling that I did. It's almost like when I was in middle school and I'd have a fight with my best friend, right? And on the other side of that fight, you're closer than you were before. And throughout this process, right, I can't answer the question, why us? Crappy genes, right? The fact that maybe he didn't take care of himself, and I certainly didn't take care of myself, right? I don't think that God gave him cancer. I want to be very clear on that. But it occurred to me, why not us? Because here's what happened. He had surgery on February 12th, and what was supposed to be a simple surgery was not. And he was in ICU, and we had to go out of town for this surgery, and we were there much longer than expected. And I had friends in AA buying me hotel rooms because they knew that I probably wouldn't leave his side, but I needed some rest. So they would call me and they would say, "Hey, Megan, we got you a reservation at this hotel. You better go use it." We had people come to our house and take care of those dogs and make sure that they were not just fed, but they were walked and they were loved. We had meals. We had, he had trips, rides to treatment that he had to have daily for a very long time. We were so well taken care of. And you guys were God with skin, right? You guys walked through all of it with us, and we were never alone. And there were some very, very, very scary moments because the complications that he had post-surgery didn't stop there. He got blood clots, and then he got hemorrhages, and it was a terrible, terrible ordeal. But you were there with me, and so was God, right? And through all of it, I got to grow deeper, right? In this relationship with this power that I don't understand. And I think I started to grasp that that God won't necessarily save me from the pain and suffering that comes with being human, but God will sustain me through everything to the extent that I allow him, right? And the way I picture it is that God's love, grace, mercy, all of these wonderful things have always been showered down upon me. My problem is that I have my little umbrella of self-sufficiency up, right? And I don't have to be drunk to have my little umbrella of self-sufficiency up. And it's not until my arm gets so dang tired of holding up that dang umbrella that I put it down. And my only job is to receive, right? My only job is to receive that love and that forgiveness and that grace and that mercy, not for me, not so that I feel real good about me, but so that I can give it to you. Because if I give you my forgiveness, if I give you my love, it is insufficient. It comes with strings attached. But when I receive God's and I allow it to flow through me onto you, then I believe that I am fulfilling that primary purpose of being the maximum service to God and to my fellows. But I'm human, right? And I make mistakes. And my biggest issue is that I have a need to know and a need to understand. And I remember being very, very newly sober. My sponsor telling me, Megan, your need to know will kill you. And I understand that today, right? Because there were some questions, right, that I really felt that I needed to know the answer to. And it wasn't a graceful period. But the beauty is, right, is that I was always rooted within Alcoholics Anonymous. One thing that we say here at the end of the meeting is not keep coming back, but stay. And when I say that, I mean, I know, I've seen a lot of people that I love dearly leave us and not have the opportunity to come back. And that is part of it. But when I say it, I'm saying it to myself. In the fact that what I do for an hour a day when I am in the meeting is not nearly as important as what I do for the other 23. And when I leave the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, can I allow the fellowship in God to remain within my heart? Can I stay within the principles that I am taught in AA and can practice relatively easily in a meeting for 1 hour? Then you take me out of the meeting and you watch my behavior, and I'm pretty sure you would be convinced I have not taken a third step. So can I stay in that even when I'm not with you? That is why I say stay. And I've come to believe again and again of the power of the first step. And what I mean by that is this idea, right, of my utter inability to manage my life. And the harder that I try, the worse it gets. And the harder that I try and the worse it gets, the more restless, irritable, and discontent I get. And that eventually, right, the lie in my head, I need a little relief, will come back. And I have been very fortunate in the fact that I've heard that lie sober, and I've been aware of it enough, right, to take action. But this idea, right, that I think that I thought for a period of time that I was what was keeping me sober. And what I understand today is that it is my relationship with God not God per se, but my relationship, because I am responsible for that relationship. I am responsible for putting the effort in order to be in fit spiritual condition per se. But what I can tell you is that I have not been in fit spiritual condition most of this year. Yet I can sit here tonight in front of you and tell you that I'm sober, and I don't know how that occurs other than through the love of a God that I don't understand. Right, that and remaining right in the fellowship, remaining to the best of my ability to work with newcomers, because they really put my problems in perspective, right? To continue to get to meetings even when it feels as though my life is crashing down upon me. In fact, there was a period of time where we were out of town and I couldn't get to my home group for about 3 weeks, and I walked into my home group and I sobbed, and I felt stupid because I'm not a crier. I'm tough. And I just sat there the whole meeting, and I don't know what the speaker said. I just cried, probably gave that poor person a complex because, of course, it's all about me. I'm sure they noticed. But I was so relieved, right, to be home. I was home. And I felt as though I hadn't been home in a very long time. And the power, right, that we find here, both through meeting a God, right? I met God through the steps. And you guys being active in the fellowship, you continue to point me towards God, right? As long as I'm active in Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't forget what my problem is, right? My problem is that I am an alcoholic, and alcohol is my solution to my problems. And that anything that distracts me or separates me from the power is the problem, right? The book tells us that its main object is to enable us to find a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem, singular problem, one problem, lack of power. Right. And anything that gets between me and God is the problem. And many things do, yet I remain sober here in front of you today because of the grace of a loving God, because of the action that I take to maintain that relationship, even when I'm ticked off at the relationship. And because I have been taught that we remain a part of Alcoholics Anonymous, that we lean in, we don't lean out when life gets lifey. And it certainly has been a lifey year, but what I can tell you is that today my husband is in remission. And I don't know what the future looks like, but I know what today does, right? I've also been taught that love and gratitude are in action. If I truly love Alcoholics Anonymous, and if I am truly grateful for what you all have given me, then I will stay here. And I will extend my hand to the next suffering alcoholic to the best of my ability. So I want to thank you guys for teaching me these things. And with that, I'll pass.